All right, time now to bring in our political panel, former Howard Government Minister Peter McGauran and former Labor advisor, now the Managing Director of AUKUS Britton, Simon Banks. Good to speak to you both. We'll just start with AUKUS first of all. So Australia, the US and the UK, they're expected to announce soon that they will launch formal talks aimed at collaborating with other countries on advanced defence technologies, in particular Japan. ASPI Defence Strategy expert Malcolm Davis says Japan should definitely join AUKUS. First to you, Peter, what's your view?
Oh, a great idea. And remember, it's not to do with the nuclear submarines, if I can make that obvious point. It's to do with the technology transfer and co-development, whether it's AI or autonomous underwater vehicles and so on. So it's a great thing. It does send a strong message to China. The inclusion of Japan will not be missed by China, to put it mildly.
And Simon, when it comes to countering China, do you agree that it's kind of, when it comes to allies, it's the more the merrier when it comes to these security pacts?
Well, the golden rule in foreign policy is you want more jaw and less war. I think this is a really good idea. Pillar 2, which is exactly what Peter was talking about, which is the extension of technology transfer and cooperation, a really critical part of that. Japan's a really obvious first and natural sort of additional partner to the trio that we currently have. But I actually hope we think about whether there are other Western nations who can suitably join this partnership as well. I think the more we work together, the better we have a good and effective defence, the less likely it is that the things that we don't want to have happen will happen.
Now, I was just talking to Richo about the investigation by Air Chief Marshal Mark Binskin into the IDF following that attack on aid workers within Gaza. Now, Green Senator David Shoebridge, he is about to hold a press conference in the next few minutes, and he says, following the murder of Australian aid workers Zomi Frankham and 6 of her colleagues by an EBIT systems drone operated by the Israeli military, the Albanese government must immediately cancel the $917 million contract it has entered with the same Israeli arms manufacturer. Peter, should the government be looking into cancelling armed deals with Israel?
No, and I don't believe they should be assigning their own independent investigator. I'm deeply disturbed by the government's actions in response to this terrible, shocking and totally avoidable tragedy where Zomi Frankham lost her life, along with 6 other good, decent people trying to help their fellow man in one of the most dangerous places in the world. But Israel will investigate this, and they will convey the findings to the Australian government and the other governments involved. Israel is a liberal, open society. You only have to look at the demonstrations against the current government and the diversity of views as to the conduct of the war to realise this. I think Minister Wong has used this tragedy to hammer home to Israel her own views and those of a significant proportion of the government. She runs the risk of politicising the tragic death of a young Australian. I believe that Australian government's response is out of proportion to the action that's needed to avoid another tragic loss of this kind.
Simon, do you agree with that, with the government asking for more transparency from the IDF around that investigation by announcing that we will be sending over Air Chief Marshal Mark Binskin to look into it? Is it sending the wrong message, as Peter is suggesting?
No, actually, sadly, I don't think it is. I mean, let's go back one step, first of all, and acknowledge that the only reason why this conflict is occurring is because Hamas committed a really vile act of terrorism. And Israel, through the IDF, has a right to defend itself. But it must also do so consistent with the rules of war. And a fundamental element of that is about the safe and adequate provision of humanitarian aid to the innocent people who are inevitably caught up in this conflict. What happened here and the targeting of this particular convoy was not acceptable. It should not have occurred. And I think the international community are concerned not only about that incident, but they are concerned about some other aspects of the way in which Israel is conducting this war. So I think sending someone as experienced as former Admiral Binskin over to investigate this is actually important. I think the international community is looking at Israel's conduct of this war very closely, and we're seeing that from our closest ally from the United States down, that people are concerned that Israel is not complying with the rules, and it needs to.
Okay, well, Peter McGauran, Simon Banks, we're out of time, but thank you so much to you both for coming on the program. Talk to you soon.
Pleasure.
Coming up in the next hour.